So this is pretty interesting. So it looks like The Hills Rising, which is a show that I know you guys are big fans of, got a bit of backlash. Now, a lot of you guys may not know this, but Saagar Enjeti, who is the co-host with Krystal on The Hills Rising, he's actually a conservative. He either still works for or previously worked for the Daily Caller, which is founded by Tucker Carlson. I believe he's praised Tucker Carlson. He's, given him props. But he is a conservative. Now, I'm not sure how open he is about his conservatism. I think he's fairly open about it, but I'm not sure. But he is a conservative, so a lot of you guys may not know that. And Bernie Sanders was recently endorsed by Emily Ratajkowski, who my understanding is a model. She endorsed him back in 2016. And they released an advertisement that I thought was pretty good. It covers healthcare, covers social justice, civil rights, etc., etc. And Saagar had an interesting take on this, and as you can see here from the dislike to like bar, it's at 1.8k likes, 1.4k dislikes. There was a lot of dissent here. So, I'm going to let this play, and we're going to come back and talk about this.
All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, supermodel Emily Ratajkowski endorsed Senator Bernie Sanders yesterday. The move wasn't all that surprising, given that she endorsed him in 2016 as well. But it highlights an interesting trend I'm beginning to notice amongst Hollywood elites like herself and Ariana Grande. They're essentially twisting Bernie Sanders, the man, into an elite lifestyle brand that represents progressive cultural change far more than he represents economic change. Just listen to her endorsement video.
Not only has he always advocated for healthcare, he's also always been on the right side as far as civil and humanitarian issues.
Who is going to be speaking out for people who need someone to speak out for them?
It just was like, this is our man.
Ratajkowski in that video endorses Sanders not because of his economic threat to the financial elites of this country, but because of what she says is his civil and humanitarian rights record. There's no question, Sanders actually has a stellar right on civil rights. But later on in the video, she pivots the entire thing to saying she's endorsing him because of his strong record on feminism. Now, if Bernie wants to maintain his high crossover support amongst Trump voters and stand any shot of winning back the working class of this country, then the absolute last thing he should want is Emily Ratajkowski. And it highlights the central problem for the Sanders movement writ large. Emily Ratajkowski's contribution to our political discourse has been a lot of empty words peppered with the phrase fourth wave feminism and then getting performatively arrested at a Brett Kavanaugh protest. And Sanders' core message is that the system is fundamentally rigged against the American worker and our younger citizens economically. That most social, gender, and political ills stem from that original sin of the American economy. Now, embracing pandering and preening social justice figures undercuts his core anti-elite message and highlights what I believe is the most likely course of a Bernie Sanders nomination and presidency. Right now, the Hollywood and the cultural elite have a much better option than Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who represents a nod to economic change but really is a far-left culture warrior. And if Bernie were to win the nomination, the left cultural forces in the media and Hollywood would rightfully see it as a zero-sum game and they would latch onto his coattails. Bernie's footsie with models, actors, and pop stars shows he would readily accept it. And worse, Sanders has even shown he will bow to those forces at the expense of his actual core economic supporters. I'm speaking here, of course, of his unendorsement of Cenk Uygur after fake woke outcry about Uygur's past statements which did not pass the test of time. That incident showed us that Bernie is willing to bend over backwards for the liberal cultural elite who have immense power in this country and demand access to his movement and his future administration. That means, while Bernie himself may be a class warrior, that a whole lot of woke warriors are going to be working for him, and that therein lies the problem. Not just for people who consider themselves normal people, but America at large. Because America may agree that the economy is fundamentally rigged and does not work for them, but nobody will agree with the woke elements of his coalition. America is a center-right country. You would not know that if you watched the mainstream media or if you took a look at any of these major newspapers. But Gallup polling that came out yesterday shows that not only does a plurality of the country identify as conservative, but that the percentage of people who identify that way went up by 2% between 2018 and 2019, while the percentage of those who identify as liberal dropped by 2%. Furthermore, only 49% of Democrats in America identify as liberal, with the rest identifying as either moderate or conservative. Sanders' economic populist message appeals across the ideological spectrum, but the one thing that would hold him back is his current winning alliance with the woke cultural left. Donald Trump is a cultural president, and if Bernie Sanders wants to beat him, he would need to be an economic one. And that's the main thing I wanted to highlight, Krystal, which is that...
So, as you see here, and Krystal Ball actually ends up, she goes on to basically fight back against what Saagar says, and she actually made an interesting point that I hadn't thought of, and she basically says that it is that, Trump loves celebs as well, and so this is kind of something that happens with sort of all the presidential candidates. But virtually everything he said there was just totally off. So first of all, first thing I'll start out with is the Cenk Uygur situation. Bernie Sanders didn't do anything in that scenario. It was Cenk Uygur who contacted Bernie Sanders and told him to repeal to take back the endorsement. So what is Bernie going to do? Like, no, Cenk, I'm not going to listen to you and retract my endorsement of you. What is he going to do? Is he going to do that? That doesn't make any sense. So it wasn't Bernie deciding to do that. It was Cenk Uygur. So Bernie didn't bow down. It was him, listening to what Cenk's wishes were, essentially. So that's completely wrong. Also, when you say that, he says that America, and this is verbatim quote, he says that America is a center-right country, which is totally bogus, okay? And that's why he even talks about the populist message. So it's not that the country is center-right. And the way to go by that is not by asking what people align with in these, clicky labels type of thing of liberal, moderate, conservative. What you have to do is you have to go issue by issue. And as we've seen through polling data, when you go by the issues, it's overwhelmingly, left-wing is what we see, okay? So do not buy that. America is not a center-right country. There's way more liberals in the country than there are conservatives. We see voter suppression going on. Younger people who are disproportionately liberal don't go out to vote, so we see that in the vote totals. It's totally not true, completely untrue. There's way more liberals than there are conservatives. And when you go issue by issue, people are progressive when it comes to politics. When you go free college education, $15 minimum wage, etc., etc. So that's another piece there that's totally bogus. Now, what seems to be a little bit odd here is this sort of concern that he's having for the campaign. Now, I had watched the advertisement from Emily Ratajkowski and Bernie Sanders' campaign just yesterday, and I came away from it thinking hey, this is a pretty good advertisement. And what I think is that we need to not go to two extremes. Now, the thing you have to understand is Saagar is a conservative. He's not coming at this from a progressive standpoint. He comes at it from a different standpoint. So, are there these sort of hyper-woke elements of the left, right? That want you to vote a candidate based on, what their gender is. Yes, vote for Hillary because she's a woman. That's ridiculous, right? Yes, those do exist. However, the response to that is not to go to the complete end of the spectrum, which is that there's no problems that deal with race in society, which is totally wrong. We have a ton of problems. Our system, is disproportionately, works against African Americans, or especially our justice system, and there's no denying that. Study after study shows that judges give black people harsher sentences. They're charged with, charges that have federal mandatory minimums more often than white people are. Often they're charged with charges that hold higher things for black people. These come out every single year. Every time the Booker report comes out, this is very clear. There's even studies that show that basically, if you have a black-sounding name, you're less likely to get a job a job interview based off of an application. Even if you have the same or better of a record, essentially. So there's totally problems that we need to fix. So social justice is an important thing. It's just it's been hijacked and it's been tainted. And what are you gonna do? Not take the celebrity support? That doesn't make any sense. Especially because her case was healthcare, which is huge, social justice, feminism, civil rights, etc., etc. I think that that's a pretty good reason. And he says, she doesn't support him because of his economic beliefs. Yeah, but he holds those economic beliefs. So why would she support him if she's not aware of his economic beliefs and what he believes in economically? So in other words, you're not going to support a candidate, or she's not supporting a candidate, without knowing his economic policies. That's ridiculous. And also, when I see a celebrity come out and endorse Bernie Sanders, I give them credit. I give them even more respect, because if you're somebody with boatloads of cash and a lot of social capital as well as wealth, and you're like, you know what? For the good of the country, I want to pay more taxes because it'll be a more beneficial society. I'm like, wow, that's really awesome. You earned a lot of my respect because there's not a lot of people out there. So when rich people come out and support Bernie Sanders and they're like, yeah, I should pay higher taxes, and that's what I'm advocating for, I applaud that. I support that. I would like to incentivize that. And celebrity support helps the campaign win. And Krystal makes a good point of like how, you know, Trump loves Kanye West and all of this stuff, and this is a very common thing to do. This just seemed to be like weird concern trolling, especially for a sort of endorsement that, like, her endorsement of him wasn't that big of a deal. Like, it didn't make like a big news splash or anything like that. It wasn't like a big story or anything like that. And as long as Bernie Sanders' economic message stays strong, that's really what matters the most. But we need an all-around approach. We need to talk about how the economic system is completely rigged. The entire system is rigged. Talk about how that affects minorities the most from the jump. And then also, there are issues that are race-based that need to be fixed as well. So it's an all-the-above approach. And I think as long as he stays strong on his message, it will be fine. And we actually need that celebrity help to win this primary election. If we don't get this celebrity help, we don't take all the help we can get, we're going to lose the primary. So if celebrities want to come out and endorse Bernie Sanders, hell yeah, that's awesome. So, and you know, you got to be a little bit careful. I'm not particularly sure why so many lefties are fond of Saagar. He's a Tucker Carlson guy and a conservative guy, and you know, he's got some interesting takes on some other stuff as well, which we'll probably cover in another video. But Krystal Ball did do a pretty good job, I would say, rebutting Saagar here, but you know, some of these, basically all of the comments, sometimes he has horrible takes. This is a nothing burger, terrible segment, and we are not a center-right country. Literally the first thing she mentions is healthcare, which is very crucial, of course. I have to disagree. You're reaching. Her point in the video is he's most trusted on social issues and labor issues, as well as environment and foreign policy. Saagar is off on this. He's a cultural conservative, so he's going to be against anything to his left. Doesn't change the fact that Bernie's a true feminist. Labels are irrelevant, as most people don't know what they actually mean. You know, there's just a lot of stuff here. But yeah, the idea, this one's seriously down, most Americans are conservatives. The idea that you would believe that most Americans are conservatives, I mean, that doesn't even pass the smell test. Are you kidding me? That's absolutely hilarious. But anyways, this is a very bad video, very weird one, but just be careful of Saagar is what I'll tell you. Watch out for what he says.